Thank you for joining For Our Special Kids, where we openly and honestly discuss the magic and the mess of raising a child with special needs. We are thrilled to have you here and hope this time provides you with some wonder and wisdom. I'm your host, Jennifer Lansing. Let's get started. I wanted to thank many of you for reaching out to me after the last episode where I shared about guilt and regret and the not following your intuition and the power of positivity with manifestation and how our children really do always want the best for us. This episode today is a follow-up to last week's conversation. I had a wonderful chat with Etienne Jambou and Tania Ginsberg-Jambou, who are wonderful friends of mine. They live down in San Diego. Tania has joined us in the past. She was on the April 13th, 2023 episode talking about grief. And she was also on a Meet Amazing episode, June 26th, 2022. And today her husband is joining us for a really wonderful conversation to pull through some new concepts like diving into the darkness, how to create a safe space for sharing with your partner, staying in the present versus creating a worry-filled future. We also talk quite a bit about how moms and dads look at the future for their child differently. I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I did while I was recording it. And as always, let me know what you think. I am with Etienne and Tania. Now, you've never met Etienne yet, but he's Tania's beautiful husband. And Tania has joined us 2 times already on this beautiful podcast, sharing her wisdom. And we've never had Etienne join us.
He's going to be more insightful than I am, let's be honest.
You know, Tania, he's always more insightful. Welcome, Etienne, to the podcast.
It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Actually, I'm really happy that we're doing this because it is a follow-up to the episode that we posted, or I posted last week. And the first thing I want to say is everyone has been so kind. It was a really tricky thing for me to do, but it was also extremely cathartic. It healed me, whether or not anyone else felt good about it. Like, it healed me just being able to articulate some of the things that I've been scared to articulate around guilt, around missed opportunities, around wishing that you had time back. And I've received some beautiful comments. People have said, brave, just brave. That was brave, Jen. My mom sent me a message and she said, it really does make sense to me when I heard what you said, because you haven't been as light and airy in the last 7 years as you had been. And I was like, holy crow, I don't know if I want to hear that. But at the same time, I wanted to hear that, right? So you, Tania, sent me a beautiful long message. It was like this gorgeously typed with apostrophes and hearts and things like that on my phone. And I reached out and just, because the first thing you led with, I think, was you are not alone.
Yes.
I asked you two to come on today to talk about that concept from your perspective. So I'm going to stop talking. And Tania, why don't you start with kind of what motivated the text, other than you're my friend and you love me and I love you.
Very, very much about you.
I'll use the L word. You don't have to use it. I love
Absolutely.
you.
I adore you and I love you very much, Jen. Your episode touched me. First of all, I've known you for many years now, and you have been very honest in many domains of your life with me. I think that this one specific way of viewing your life with Teal, just as a mother, as a wife, I don't think I'd ever heard you express it so clearly and so thoroughly. And many times in your podcast, I kept hearing you say, please tell me I'm not alone in this, and that feeling of feeling alone in your thoughts. And I desperately wanted to reach out right when I listened to it first of all, you're not alone, because I've definitely felt many of those things. So just, even if it's just the two of us in this entire world, Etienne has shared with me, I know that he's also had moments of feeling like that. I think we all feel that way from time to time, or all the time, or very little. I think that there's a variety of intensities to feel that, and at different stages of life. Our children are no longer babies. They're almost 8 for Teal, and Ben is 8. And we still have a long road ahead as parents to these children, but we've also gone through a lot already. So you are absolutely not alone. That is, I think that was the first sentence I wrote to you. And the fact that so many people are reaching out to you is proof that you are absolutely not alone in this.
And Etienne, maybe you can chime in here. Why do you think we isolate ourselves? Because I've known you both for quite some time, and I feel very genuine and honest with you. I mean, I've shared things with you. You've experienced things with me. I've experienced things with you guys that I've never experienced with anybody else. And yet, I mean, hello, we've been in Europe together. We've been in therapies together. We've been in hospital situations together. Yes. And yet, for some reason, I felt the need to not be vulnerable and honest with you on a one-to-one basis. And yet I go and like launch it on a podcast. Oh yeah, that's cool. What is that about? Why do we do that?
We have a term here. We say that we go dark when some of those things happen to us, and we try to see if we go dark when it comes to our past, the present, and the future. And those are very, very different. When it comes to going dark with the past, it's about going back to the trauma, to what happened, the what ifs, and what if we had chosen a different path. This is very much set in stone. And then we have the present and the everyday present of all the little things are harder than for anyone else around us. And sometimes we don't actually feel seen. And then the future, it's all about the fears. We project whatever is happening in the present and we throw it into the future, not understanding at that present moment when we go dark that life is moving, life can evolve, life can change, and will bring new things. The fear is I'm taking one thing, I'm going to the future, and I'm seeing darkness going further than just that present moment. And going back to your question around why we do not share more, why we do not communicate more, I think it's at times we fear that we're not going to get out of this darkness if we share more of it, as if it was that black hole that we fear we might get into and not come back out of. And sometimes we get that mentality of, let me power through. Let me power through. If I get into a discussion about it with a close person of mine, I might even go further and deeper, and I don't have the energy at the moment to go through that. So how about power through, get out of it for a while, and then we'll reassess. So there might be this tug of war. And obviously we know that by talking about it, eventually we might be better, because obviously we can share and we can get different perspectives. But at times, I don't know if we feel like we have enough energy to go through that short moment of sharing.
I love what you said about the fear and that, like, feeding the black hole even more negativity makes the dark black hole deeper and scarier, right? And yet at the same time, I wrote a lot of that before. Like, I wasn't planning on doing a podcast about it. I was just needing to write some things down. And then all of a sudden it just started pouring out of me. But I don't think I had those words even to articulate maybe a year ago. I knew I was feeling it, and I knew my self-talk in my head said, man, I really wish I could go back to that day that I knew something was wrong. But I can't, right? And you said it's in stone. You can't go back and change the past. But healing our future is what's most important. And I didn't have the words until I started writing it. So I do encourage, if anyone is in this dark hole right now, put a pen to a paper or put some fingers on your keyboard and just dump it. Just get it out. Start putting some words to it, because that's when I started feeling more healing. Tell me about your relationship and processing, how you each individually process these situations and then coming together as a family and a couple.
I think what's fascinating is that Tania and I went through the same trauma. the same path in a way, or the same facts. And yet, when it comes to discussing fears and darkness, all of it is very different. And obviously, it comes from our past and our personalities and everything that's about us. But when it comes to my own darkness, for example, I have a lot of fears around me dying and not being here anymore for Benjamin, for my son, and being able to care for him and for him to have this feeling of loneliness in this world and not being cared for. And I hope you don't mind, Tania, but when it comes to Tania, there are more pragmatic fears. Is he ever gonna find someone who's gonna love him in the next few years? And I don't have those fears. And so, and to some extent, I might not have those fears because I'm of the mindset of we'll be here to some extent. We'll be here to carry through and to be with him. And so that's the fascinating thing, is that same set of facts, and yet we come from different worlds, and yet we have different fears, right? I think going back to your question, it's about bringing those fears out, trying to be very mindful of what is our present. Each time we're taken into the future, how about we assess what our present is, and how about we assess the fact that our son, even though he has a disability, is a very happy human being? How about we bring it back to the core of what is instead of what could be? And we think he's very much loved right now, that he has a lot of life to him right now. And I think it's very grounding. And then doesn't mean that you ignore the future in any way, but then there's a matter of what is it that we control and what is it that we don't control in this life. And it's true that when you have a special needs child, you get to be humbled by the fact that there's a lot of things you don't control. But in a way, it might seem like you lose power through this, but I think it's quite the opposite, because the moment you realize that in this world, there's not much you control, but there's a sliver of it that you do control, then it gives you power to actually bring back the focus on what you control. And today I do control being able to spend time with him and understand his needs better and communicate with him better and provide different resources for him to have right now a better life. So I think I went on a tangent, and I'm sorry, but I think, when it comes to our relationship, it's about bringing back all the darkness and put it on the table, I guess, and just welcoming it and not trying to fix it in any way, and just honoring the fears and the darkness.
Yeah, if I can add to that, I think Etienne and I have joked about the fact that for the most part, he and I do not go dark at the same time, which is nice. So we give each other like a little bit of space. And there have been a few times where we've both gone dark, and in the end, we just have to laugh about it of like, well, this is sucky. Like, no one's, gonna be the, head above water person right now, but that's where we are. I agree. I think Etienne and I, without even clearly stating it, have an agreement that when one person goes dark, the other person just listens. And that it's not the time to find solutions. It's not the time to try to reason and say, no, that's not going to happen. Just allow the person to go fully dark. And I think that has helped me immensely, because I feel like I can just spew everything out, and that nothing will be ever turned back against me of like, you said this. I think there's a mutual respect that we have for one another, especially regarding that, of allowing the person to feel whatever they're feeling and to go as far deep. And sometimes we even encourage the other one to go darker and to say, okay, that happens, and then what?
Right.
And it's that question, then what?
And now, then what? Tell me more. And then what?
Keep going.
Where else does it go?
Where else does it go? Yeah.
This is such a powerful exercise. It's you need to feel very safe to do it, but this is a very powerful exercise. Hey, Etienne, you're dead tomorrow. Okay, so what's happening to Benjamin? What are your feelings around this? Let's go deep, and it's intense.
My heart rate just runs.
I know. I'm like, yeah, okay. So, okay, a couple of things. Safe zone.
Yeah.
I love that. Asking questions that allow the person to feel okay about going deeper, right? I think so. It's not just
Yes.
listening. You're also adding on the, okay, tell me more. Now what? Okay, make it worse in your head. Like, what's the worst thing?
Mm-hmm.
And then you can come out of it. How do you then come out of it? What's that next step for you in that process?
Mm.
It even comes with the understanding that there shouldn't even be a resolution at the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because the idea in itself of a resolution is very connected to the notion of fixing, which is what we want to avoid in the first place. So sometimes it's just gonna nicely die out like a wave that on shores, and then we move on to doing dishes.
Yeah.
It can be that
No,
subtle.
it's so true. Like there's so many times that I've said over the 20 plus years that I've been with my husband, I just need to cry. Like,
Yes.
that's it. I just need to let it all out. And then he won't say a word, or
Yeah.
he'll just like touch me,
Mm.
and I'll say, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I'm better now.
Mm-hmm.
What?
Yeah.
But it's just being honest and vulnerable enough with yourself and in a safe, we're both very, very lucky we're all very lucky that we both have amazing husbands,
Yes.
and they're lucky to have us. That's just,
Yes, they are.
I wanted to go back to something that I think is very interesting, and it just hit me recently as well. When Etienne, you said your fears are significantly different than Tanya's. And I was thinking about what word would I assign if I had to assign a word. I think Alex worries, and I have more grief. Like he needs to process through the worrying, and I need to process through the grief. Like it was very interesting because my mom said, how's Alex doing with all this? And I said, well, this is what I think we're both working on. He is always thinking, is she taken care of enough? Do we have a trust set up for her? Is the will ready to go? Are we saving enough? I mean, the other day I had the nerve to say, can we just buy something like a house or something, and like use all this money that we're saving and like go to Hawaii and buy a house? Like these are not third world problems. And he looked at me. I'm like, what are we saving for? I mean, of course, it was in a bad moment. And he looked at me. He gave me like well, Jen, we're saving for teal. Okay, well, that just made me feel like absolute horseshit. However, it did help me go, God, you're so right. I'm glad you're the one worrying. Now I'm thinking, yeah, we should get a house in Hawaii for Teal because she thrives there. Because I'm thinking about the present, like kind of like what you're saying. Is he going to fall in love? Is she going to learn how to swim, and how is she going to make friends? And we're going to create all of these amazing memories and moments that if something were to happen to us, she would never, ever forget those moments. Like I'm thinking about that stuff, and that's why I want that house in Hawaii for her to have this golden time. And he's worrying, so it's very, I think it's important to acknowledge that each of us are carrying very different views of that struggle.
I agree. And I would even go push that further and say, because Etienne is very similar to Alex in terms of financially wanting to plan for especially for Ben. We do have 2 other children, but especially for Ben. And because in a way he is worried about that, it almost allows me to not have to worry about that and then to worry about something else. And so if he weren't worried about our finances, for example, would that then become a worry for me of saying, well, what would happen to him? Who could take care of him? Will there be enough support around? So sometimes
Such a good point.
I think child rearing in general is very interesting that way, of almost if one parent takes on a certain role, it allows the other parent to take on something else. And sometimes we turn that against each other when we're raising children, of how come you're only doing this, or how come this is your fear. But actually, in a way, it's a gift to the other person doesn't have to be my concern because you fully have taken this on.
You mean the bad cop hat? Why do I always have to wear the bad cop hat? Like, hey,
Yes.
it's time to get her in the bathtub. Hey, have we fed her yet? Hey, I mentioned 30 minutes ago that you guys should maybe move from the playtime into the
Yes.
bath time. You can keep having fun in the bath. I'm like, why do
That's
I always
so
have to bring
organized, Jen. Organized and practical.
right? I don't want to wear that hat all the time. What, Etienne?
Tell us how you feel. Tell us more.
Like I said, I only do this podcast for me. Truthfully, it's becoming more and more clear that I'm like, I just like to hear myself vent and talk through things. I'm like, okay, I feel better now. Thanks for listening, everybody. Sorry.
You obviously brought up the word grief, and I want to go back to that word because you brought up worry on Alex's side and grief on your end. Is it grieving the life you haven't had because of what happened? Or how would you define that grief? Is it one that stuck in the past? It's one that's stuck in a future that will never be?
All of the above. And I used to try to define it more. But even talking about it lessens it. So it's not that it's just poof, gone, but putting voice to it, putting words to it, and saying, I do grieve that night before she was born. I do grieve the future that is unknown. I do try to say yet, she's not talking fully yet. I try to use those words a lot, but that the fear of the unknown I do hold grief to it because there's that what if story that, like you were talking about, this future that we create. I attach grief to it, anticipatory. So it's anticipatory grief of the future that may not be, which makes no sense. Really? That doesn't work. Why would I anticipate being sad about her future when that future has been beautiful and bright every moment of our life? Yes, there are things that hurt and I get sad about, but usually it's external. Usually that is not the life that we live inside our house. It's like I mentioned on the previous podcast, it's when you see a 2-year-old doing something that your 7-year-old can't do. So it's these external things that pull out these more significant emotions in me. When we're sitting at home and giggling, or I'm looking through my phone of her I just looked at this, like she was trying to ski backwards and she was laughing so hard because she was just imitating us. I was skiing backwards as she was trying to come forwards, and she was like, well, I'm going to try this backwards. She's laughing her head off because, first of all, she can't even really ski forwards. So why the heck are we now trying to ski backwards? But whatever, she is laughing her head off. And you know what? That is what you were talking about, Etienne, of that pure, present, joyful moment. The universe has never let us down with her. She has always blown our expectations away. She's amazing and incredible. So why would I think that the future wouldn't be any different than this? And I know Ben and all 3 of your children are the exact same way with you.
I still believe that it's valid to go through that grief even further and to push it in a darker way, the way we brought up, given you have a safe zone to do that. If you go there, if you go like, oh, if XO, then what would your life be and what would you get out of that life, is a way also to have a true understanding of what might be lacking or missing in this life of yours or in this future life of yours that could be actually tackled in a way and addressed. So I think it's both are valid. It's valid to take that fear, bring it as much as you can, just to unravel in the first place why it came about and how does it serve a purpose in itself, and what does it tell you about yourself and your inner needs. Because if you go there, you might actually realize that those inner needs could be tackled, could be addressed if they're verbalized. Does it make any sense?
Yeah, it totally does. I'm thinking of just like a very simple scenario of what happens if she never can live independently. I know you guys probably have gone there in your heads. Like, will I always have a child in my house?
Yes.
Now I chuckle because my brother still has his 2 20-year-old sons living in his house. So really, why am I that worried? They're happy.
So I think then you go further. Then you're like, okay, I'm there.
Yeah.
She's still with us.
Mhm.
What does it mean for me?
Yes.
How do I feel then? What's preventing me from fulfilling the life I want to fulfill when she's there with us?
Yeah.
And
I'm just exhausted in my head right now listening to
Yes.
this. I'm like, I'm that's my big key. Like, I would still be exhausted.
Yeah.
What happens if she doesn't learn how to feed herself completely?
Yes.
Exhausted.
Yes.
But then I think what you're saying, Etienne, is all right, then what do you need to support the exhaustion?
Mm-hmm.
What do you need to fulfill that hole that you just created? Because if you don't talk about it and you don't go there with that emotion, then you never know what needs, and I'm putting it in quotes, attention or fix it. Like, what needs attention? What needs to be caressed and filled within my world?
Yeah.
I love how you guys are giving me a therapy session right now. It's lovely. Mm-hmm.
you're welcome. We'll send you our Venmo right after.
That sounds perfect. So, what other thoughts do you have about this whole process of raising a child? Like, you guys are so beautiful at raising your children. I've witnessed it. I've said it on the other podcast with you, Tania. I really have a lot of admiration for how you parent as individuals, but then also as you parent as a couple. I also have a ton of respect for how you two work together. Like, you two are way nicer than like Alex and I are. So we try to emulate you guys every now and then. Like, okay, I'll be Etienne, you be Tania. Okay, go. How would they say it? No, we don't do that. But it would be good exercise. But anywho, so there's my prep to that question is when you really think about what makes you two successful in your parenting journey. What do you think that answer would be as you look into the future of what you want other people to hear and maybe put into their lives?
Wow.
To go through the darkness we spoke about having a safe environment, right? You don't want to have to create that safe environment after the darkness. So I think some of the questions that we could be asking ourselves is how do we create on a daily basis a safe environment that's so strong that when things are really dark, it's there to rely on. And it's true that I could say things such as understanding each other's need and reaching out to each other and understanding their daily needs and all this. What we found is that unless you have almost a process and a platform to address it, it's hard to really do it systematically. So it's hard to just at night say, hey, how you doing? How was your day? Whatever. Unless you have something that's deeper that's going to lead to that, it's going to be tougher. So one exercise that we do with Tania is that we have those Esther cards. It's a card game for couples or even friends where you pick up a card and you bring up, and it brings up a question.
We've made the game our own because there are rules.
There are rules and all this, but we threw all the rules out of the window, and pretty much what we decided to do on a systematic basis is just to pick one card every night. And no matter what, we bring that up, we read it out loud. Sometimes it speaks to us, sometimes it doesn't. But it creates an environment for some really profound talking to happen. And it's been good. And most of the times, we don't even really answer the question. We just go in one direction that's going to fit each other's needs at a given point in conversation. And it's been really good in that respect.
A lighter way of doing that, we went on a date the other night and I pulled up the 10 fun questions to ask your husband or wife on a date.
Nice.
And it was like, when did you know you loved me? Or what was the first thing that you noticed about me physically?
Yes.
Right. And like, he told me an answer and I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, but it just creates dialogue. And that's what you're saying is I loved how you said you have to have a safe environment before you have the dialogue. So every moment is an opportunity to make a space safer for your partner and safe for yourself. When the darkness hits, you're not backtracking. Tania, what about you?
Let me think. I was really engrossed in your answer.
I know. We were all enthralled. I'm like, I got to ask Tania. She's like, whatever he said, we're good.
Yeah, I'm going to just ditto that one. It's true. I do agree that the idea of trying to help each other during the really acute, difficult moments of either a hospital stay or your child being incredibly sick or problems at school or whatever the dynamic could be, or even just not regarding the child, but even just your own life of losing a parent or whatever it can be. The idea that that's not the time to try to have this beautiful relationship with your partner and share all your deepest thoughts with that person. It's all the other times in between. And in those really acute, painful, difficult, whatever word you want to associate with, to just live it and to be in it and to do whatever it takes to get through that. I guess the idea of the powering through, I think, is ingrained in so many of us parents with children with different needs or disabilities, special needs, whatever you want to call it. It's so ingrained because we have had to power through once, twice, every single day on a regular basis. Whether we had that before having our children or not, we've learned to do that. And so to sometimes, I think, have respect for ourselves or grace of sometimes we do need to power through. For us, for our child, we need to get through a situation. And then there are other times in the more, I guess, everyday, mundane moments to really have that, okay, this is where I'm at. Feelings that were brought up or that I just have now.
Grace is a really big one. To just take a step back and look at the other person and realize right there, they're really the best they can be right now. Even if there might be a disagreement, you might have a different vision, to just have enough heart to see that the other one is giving it all they can at that given moment. That's a pretty powerful thing to offer in a given moment to another person.
We always talk about, are you giving me the benefit of the doubt?
Mm-hmm.
And we started implementing that when we were in our early 20s.
Yes.
Like, you've got to give me the benefit of the doubt. Do you really think that I would want you to feel that way? And then when you look at it that way, you're all, well, no, you love me, right?
Yeah.
So having the grace, being respectful.
And the grace, I'll speak for myself. We do have 2 neurotypical children, and there is a difference in raising a neurotypical child and the difficulties that are around that. And it's very different than raising a child with any sort of disability. There is a difference, and for me, acknowledge that and for that to sit with me and for it to be okay is not always easy, but we have daily reminders between all 3 of our children that it is not the same. It's not the same in the past, it's not the same in the present, and it's not the same for the future. That is the reality. And sometimes that feels heavy. You're talking about your lightness that you may have lost or misplaced, or
you guys are like, how light were you before? Holy God.
There's a heaviness that I do feel as the mother of that reality.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing with me and all your wisdoms. Sharing all your wisdoms with me. I really appreciate it. And I know this conversation will greatly benefit our listeners. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen.
You're welcome.
After our recording, Tania texted me a couple of additional thoughts that I would like to share with you. First, she said, we do not have everything figured out in terms of parenting a child with special needs. What we spoke about is what is working for us right now. And the second thing she said is we've gone through some really difficult times as parents and as a couple. We didn't know how to navigate this new life, and we definitely weren't always the best versions of ourselves. Our own needs and fears sometimes got in the way of a happy home. And through the last 10 years of parenting, we've learned how to be a new kind of couple that works for us and for our family. Tania, I'm happy that you sent those extra little caveats. You're a wonderful human being. You and your husband are blessings to us. And everyone, I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you found 1 or 2 meaningful nuggets of information to make your day better. If you think there's value in what we do, please take a moment to tell another friend, family member, or a caregiver. We'd love to hear from you at forourspecialkids@gmail.com. You can send in a question, a comment, a topic that you'd like to learn more about, or if you'd like us to highlight a certain person, please send that information to us. It makes our show so much better and so much more valuable for you. Our Facebook and Instagram handle is For Our Special Kids. And finally, remember to witness the wonder and the wisdom within yourself and others. Until next time.